when she retired from the field. Oh, yes, thank you. I always forget to do that. Thank you. Um, yes, she retired from the field. She is currently working on expanding her knowledge of the SCI and SCI community and disability in general, fulfilling her passion of working with people and making connections. Together, this interabled couple are using their knowledge, skills, and experience to keep the conversation going with their peers and the SCI community and beyond. There's a vast amount of untapped peer knowledge and experience out there. They would like to gather these resources and share them as a means of serving those within and outside of the SCI community. Their website, t6talk.com, is one of their first projects together. It is designed to dispel myths, illuminate truths, and share as a community. So without further ado, this is Wallace and Melanie.
Hello. Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and say hello to everybody, and thanks for joining us this afternoon for a discussion on disability and relationships. For more information about us, you could visit the aforementioned website, t6talk.com.
We aim to be inclusive. We hope that what we have to say resonates with you because we're speaking from our lived experience, so we don't presume to speak for you. We invite you to connect with us today or through our website and share your stories and experiences with us. We'll be talking for about 30 to 35 minutes, and then we can go and have a group chat. If there's topics you'd like to delve into further, or if we don't touch on ones that are important to you, just let Sherry know or Megan know. If you like how we present, we'd be happy to come back and do more of these sessions. Our discussion today will focus on relationships and assertive communication, but we'll also touch on the topic of consent, when and how to put yourselves out there, the reality of our bodies versus societal norms, talking to our potential partners about sex, the notion that those of us with a disability should only seek out partners with a disability, the danger of settling, as well as the line between intimate partner and caregiver. So there's a lot for us to get through. Where should our starting point be, Wallace?
Well, really, when it comes down to relationships, it's important to start examining the relationship that you have with yourself and how you communicate with you. This is usually referred to as self-talk, and that's how we'll refer to it today. By communicating assertively with ourselves, we're in a better position to examine our intimate relationships or to prepare for putting ourselves out there in the pursuit of intimate relationships.
And we do have a full talk on communication styles to examine the impact of assertive communication versus passive or aggressive communication, with the ideal being to embrace assertive. But due to the time constraints we're working with today, we'll only look at assertive communication. So Wallace, would you give us an overview of this method?
Well, when communicating with yourself, as should be the case with others as well, assertive communication means that you're being open and honest about how you feel and that you're working towards positive self-talk. You also have to really make sure that you empathize with yourself as well. Positive self-talk will propel you forward, while negative self-talk can really work to create a downward spiral. When communicating with others, it's important to demonstrate that you understand their side of things, that you empathize. It's about demanding airspace. You got to remember that your voice counts. And you also, though, have to acknowledge that the other person has that same right and that their voice counts as well. It's important to respect yourself and the person you are communicating with.
So what I'm hearing is that relationships, whether it's with yourself or with others, thrive or break down because of communication. So it may appear that there's maybe an issue with sex, for example, when in fact it's about maybe how we communicate or don't communicate about sex.
Yeah, that's right. But yet you got to remember that there are other things that may come up other than communication that can cause issues in a relationship. People can have a great communication style, but still end up ultimately growing apart.
I think too often we think that a relationship has failed if it's ended, when in fact it may have just run its course. Not every intimate relationship was meant to last forever, but with assertive communication on both sides, the relationship can end with both parties knowing that they did what they could. Then they can examine the positive takeaways from the relationship, the notion that we're leaving the garden in a better place than how we found it.
Right. We also need to pay a special attention to when there are significant changes or events that happen over the course or during the course of a relationship. Let's say an existing relationship, there's a traumatic event happens, like a spinal cord injury. It means both parties have to re-examine their self and then re-examine the relationship. It comes back to that relationship that you have with yourself. If the relationship is already strained, I mean, the traumatic event could ultimately lead to the end of the relationship. If you're able-bodied or you have a congenital or acquired disability, it's important to first know yourself. It comes back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Know what you bring to the table, know what you want and need, and practice assertive self-talk. Too often we look at a relationship to solve an issue or fill a gap in our lives that would be better addressed through really basically self-examination. It's about building your confidence, knowing you're in control of you.
By having an intimate relationship with ourselves, we increase the health of our solo sex life too, right? So not everyone is looking for a sexual partner outside of themselves, and masturbation is sex and certainly can be a fulfilling sex life.
Oh, absolutely. And it's still, pardon me, it's still the place to start for those of us who are already in intimate relationships, or if you're looking to be in an intimate relationship. If you're not pleasing yourself, really basically what it comes down to, it'll be difficult to communicate what you want or what you need from somebody else.
Sure. Yeah. I'd like to talk about consent for a moment. Consent means permission or something to happen, or for something to happen, or an agreement to do something. Consent is a key component of assertive communication, and it starts with you. Giving yourself permission or making an agreement with yourself by practicing assertive self-talk and by striving for the goals you set for yourself. Consent is certainly about ensuring all parties are consenting to sexual acts, but it goes further than that. Assertive communication is about respectful, consensual communication with yourself and with others. If I want to have a conversation about a topic that could be triggering for someone else, it's important for me to check in with that person first to see if they're in a space to have that conversation. To keep it simple, it is a verbal consent or your method of communicating. Someone can change their mind and consent can be withdrawn, and that needs to be respected. Changing circumstances may mean a need for renegotiation, and passive and aggressive communication have the potential for causing great harm.
This brings us to the when and how to put ourselves out there. I mean, for lack of better terms, when we want to get out there and meet people. The when is after you are really very solid with yourself and after you know what it is that you want from a partner. And yeah, you know, make a list of what you want from a partner, the must-haves, the deal breakers. This is really very important. The current pandemic has had a really big impact on our ability to safely make connections with people, unfortunately. We could view this time, though, as an opportunity to really date ourselves full out. Treat yourself a nice warm bath, a nice dinner, dancing, and yeah, sex. I mean, once more, sorry. That was, sorry, when I said about the whole dancing and stuff, I just had images in my head of how often you just break into dance. It's like an episode of what was it called back in the day, that TV show.
What, Solid Gold Dancers?
No, the school where they danced and sang.
Oh, Fame.
Fame. It was like an episode of Fame we've got broke out in the living room. So anyway, so once we're fully vaccinated, our options are going to open up more. Now, when we get down to the how, that depends on the individual. We would like to get some input.
Yeah, for sure. This is one that would be great to circle back to and get some feedback from people.
Absolutely.
So as we can safely get together, you might consider just being aware of when you're out in public spaces.
Challenge yourself to speak to others. I mean, not just the people that you're attracted to if you're in a social situation. It's great to practice by making connections with other people in the community too.
Yeah. And if you're in a line or you're sitting and waiting somewhere, don't look at your phone, engage.
Something else you could do is consider taking an in-person class, either to kind of hone your own personal skills, or add to the skill set by learning something completely new.
You could join a club that offers an activity you enjoy, like hiking or bowling or video games.
You know, volunteer for a cause that means something to you.
There's the pros and cons of meeting people through friends, but that's certainly an option. And if you think about it, what could happen if you tried one or a few of these options? Your world could become a bigger place with greater opportunities. You'll be working on you being the best version of you, increasing what you bring to the table and increasing your confidence. You may find connections with new people, increasing social contacts and increasing the possibility of meeting potential partners. If finding a soulmate is the only objective, you'll miss out and could become discouraged if you don't find the one the first time out, right? So this is not a sprint, it's a full-on marathon, right?
Yeah, marathon with a lot of potholes in it.
Yeah,
And,
bring your water, keep hydrated.
and trees in the way.
That's
and
right.
People throwing sticks at you.
Yeah.
This brings us to how we met. We actually met through an online dating service. Neither one of us were overly comfortable with this process. It
felt very foreign.
Man, it really didn't come easy. If you feel the same way, perhaps do it like we did in spurts. Like take 3 months on, take a break, and then go back and try it again. It was the process of, I was in the process of deleting my account actually because I was done with it. I was really feeling very frustrated with the whole process. Well, at the same time, Melanie had just opened an account and saw my profile and messaged me. I got an email alert that someone had sent me a smile, and I thought, you know what? What the hell? One last kick at the can. So the thing is, when I completed my profile, I took the time and provided lots of information. I mean, not just the necessities like like long strolls on the beach and whispers in my ear and that type of stuff that people like, these standard messages that they put down. And Melanie,
lots of photos too. There were lots of pictures with you doing different things with different people, just a very full picture.
And what I was really attracted to initially was the fact that Melanie took the time to fill out some real important information about herself. I mean, it impressed me that she had done so. And also same she with me. So I decided to message Melanie and we started talking right away. And as you can tell, we haven't stopped talking.
We don't ever stop talking.
And actually, it's funny, Melanie usually has a piece of duct tape on the back of my chair. And she calls those for the moments when she just wants to tape my mouth shut.
Yeah.
So for us, the timing was just right.
And when it comes to talking to a potential partner about sex, it's a two-way street, right? The reality of our bodies and how they function is key information to share. We're an interabled couple, but it was just as important for me to express how my body works, what I need and what I want, as it was for Wallace to do that. We both came to the table with a history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. There are arbitrary societal norms out there telling us what beautiful, attractive, and sexy looks like. If we don't fit, or if we disagree, we either hide away or we boldly break away from the norm. If an able-bodied person hasn't had any experience with disability, visible or otherwise, don't assume they have no interest or don't have the capacity to learn. I've never been in an intimate relationship with someone who had a visible disability before. Don't fall out of your chair. Before I met Wallace, but I was open to learn because I could see what he brought to the table. If Wallace hadn't done the work to love and accept himself, he wouldn't have been as open to sharing and explaining, and it would have made it difficult to get to know one another. I was able to see the work his body must do, his strength and his ability to thrive despite adversity. Sorry, I get emotional. His scars are poetry and beautiful. They tell the story of someone who is determined to live and thrive. What story or stories does your body tell? His ability to share his body and therefore his story with me made it easy for me to do the same. To be free and open with your body when you're with your partner is like being freed from invisible restraints, to be unapologetic.
So through the course of my dating life, one thing I want to let everybody here know is that the one thing that constantly was identified as being sexy was my confidence. Didn't come overnight, but once it was built, it did become the most attractive quality that people said they saw. The more we know and love ourselves, the more attractive we are to potential partners. It's also important to talk about your own biases. Okay, so what are like really think, what are your biases? Acknowledge how you view yourself and others, right? So for us with acquired disabilities, we bring our pre-injury biases with us. It becomes a part of how we view and organize for ourselves what our new world is now like. These biases can prey on our insecurities because quite often the biases are negative, right, and very quite harmful. I did some modeling post-injury, and you know, people obviously then saw me as attractive, but I didn't find that for myself. It was about what people couldn't see that was hard for me. You know, they didn't know how skinny my legs were. They didn't know, you know, that I wore a leg bag. They didn't know about the bowel and bladder issues. I didn't know how to communicate these things at first, and I was really afraid to tell people. There's that concept of ideal beauty that you touched upon earlier, right? You know, the thing of being free of flaws, having to have a great personality, no mental health issues, no physical health issues, no baggage, no problems, you know, but this simply doesn't exist. And it's really a good thing that it doesn't, because real beauty lies in diversity and variety. And remember, you make the rules for you. It starts with loving and accepting yourself for who you are. When looking for a partner, I found that it's best to be transparent, be open, and be honest. Really, why waste your time on someone that's not going to appreciate that? And quite honestly, why waste their time?
That's right. It's a two-way street for
Right.
sure. And when it comes to the reality of how our bodies work, we also need to be mindful of the society hang-ups we have about body function in general. So disability aside, who among us has always been comfortable with bowel and bladder function?
What if someone hears or smells something?
Flatulence,
Farting, something you hold back, and certainly something a woman doesn't do.
belching,
It's rude.
menstrual products,
Oh my God, if I touch a box of tampons, I'm going to catch something.
birth control, especially condoms,
Oh, now everyone's going to know what I'm up to.
sex,
Sex is only for certain people and done in approved positions. Nothing weird, people.
the taboo of masturbation.
Ah, gross. You'll go blind or grow hair on your palms.
If we found these things easy to talk about, it'd be easier to talk about how some of us do these things differently, like how you catheterize yourself, Wallace.
Exactly. I've had experience with my leg bag leaking while I was in an intimate relationship or an intimate situation. And although I haven't had any problems with my bowels in an intimate moment, you know, it's always a possibility. So it's always kind of in there, in the periphery, right, that it could happen. But it's something that I need to discuss with my partners, really. Honesty is the best policy. If they can't handle the possibility of it, really, why waste your time?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I think that a relationship is going to go in a sexual direction, I let the person know. How can a potential partner give full consent if they're not fully aware?
Mm-hmm.
For some people, the reality of what happens to our bodies as we age may be very difficult to accept. So aging with a disability may be too much for some people to handle. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with either person. It's an issue when people don't communicate openly.
What do you think about the notion that people with disabilities should only be with other people with disabilities?
Well, be with whoever you want to be, really, period, is what it comes down to. Too often, people with disabilities aren't seen as sexual beings, being it's non-sexual, both by able-bodied people and sometimes by people with disabilities themselves. A person with a disability may feel that they can only be fully, truly understood by someone else with a disability, but really, disability is such a personal experience. It's not the same thing for every person. So how is it any different to explain how your body works to someone with a disability then with someone, you know, without a disability, when everything is so unique and individualistic. It shouldn't make a difference. Communication is communication. Everybody is different and does things differently. You may think that another person with a disability will be more open, but that's another generalization and another bias, and it can lead to further biases as it goes along. Our assumptions about either population can be very harmful. The assumption that they can't handle it is unfair to the able-bodied population, to the disabled population, to anybody. Some people can't handle disability, and those people are found in the disability community as well as able-bodied community. The key thing is confidence. And if you've learned to really know your own body and you've accepted how your body functions, then it doesn't matter if the person you're with has a disability or not. Again, it's coming back to that focus is on the self.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because if somebody has a disability and they hate themselves, then that could, are they hating themselves? Are they hating the disability? It's a very complex dynamic there. So let's look at what we've said and discuss how communication or the lack thereof has impacted 5 significant relationships for you.
Okay.
So there was someone who was in your life at the time of the accident.
Right. And as you'll see when I go through these examples, how it's this focusing on yourself and being true to yourself. It's one of those things that I wish I knew earlier what I knew now, because I would have focused more on myself as opposed to focusing just on being in a relationship.
But then that brings us to the, then you wouldn't be here, and you would have found somebody awesome before you met me.
Impossible.
So,
Oh, pshaw.
So the person that was with you at the time of the accident.
Okay, well, she was in my life at the time of the accident, and she was also there for several years prior to the accident. She was a really great support to me post-injury. However, we really lacked communication. Huge. I mean, we actually broke up just prior to my injury and got back together over the course of my injury, and it was because of communication issues. She was completely a closed book. Like such things like even with my hands were too rough, so she would hold my hands, and trying to explain, figure out why that was, and to explain to her how much that upset me was just off the books. There was no way to talk about that. So there was no engagement in any meaningful conversation, and the lack of communication, both that was there pre-injury really was magnified post-injury, and it led to just the demise of the relationship.
So then there was your first relationship post-injury.
Yeah, and this is the one that really came and was based on the fact that I was so afraid of being alone, right? Which meant I didn't always make great decisions or choices because I was so afraid of being alone and so desperate to be with another person. I wasn't really being honest with myself. Due to the mess out there, misconceptions that I had internalized, those biases that I brought into myself, I really didn't realize what I was capable of. And so basically just, I settled. I settled on the first person that came along. I also feel being alone because of the negative relationship, really when it comes down to that, I had with myself.
So if you had been alone, you would have to look at yourself more. And if that wasn't good, then
being with myself wasn't good enough. I hadn't accepted who I was post-injury. And in this relationship, actually, this partner didn't communicate either. We very much weren't on the same page and didn't have the same goals. And so all of this my not accepting myself, not really looking inside to see what would be best for me, plus the communication issues and different goals and everything, again, that relationship ended.
When you look back, what did that relationship teach you?
It really taught me the importance of loving myself and not settling. It was through my exposure to a lot of other people who had been in shares for a while that had come to that realization, that shared with me their stories, that really helped me lead to my acceptance, because it allowed me to look inward and do so in a much more positive space. So basically, it also taught me that someone's acceptance of my disability wasn't enough. Like, just for them to just simply accept me wasn't enough. That I had to work on myself, my own self-talk, and carry that through to my communication with other people. It's really an important message that just because someone appears to be okay with your disability, but they treat you poorly, don't settle. Being in these relationships erode that sense of your self-worth. And being with someone just for the sake of being with someone is really very damaging. And know what you're worth and demand better.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a hard thing to do, right? For whatever reason, we tend to put other people's needs or wants or desires or whatever ahead of ours. And why do we do that? It just seems so intuitive that we really need to take care of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So you're certainly more than your disability. So the next relationship you tend to describe as being like your midlife crisis.
Yeah, I had blonde, long, curly hair, so that should say enough for that. So, and black nail polish. So it was fancy. I loved it. The nail polish I liked, actually. But there's lots of discrimination when it comes to being a parent with a disability. I had a young 3-year-old or 4-year-old child at the time, and I was now a single dad. And society tells us that we are less than. And this can lead to a lot of self-doubt. I felt vulnerable as a single dad with a disability, and I very much feared losing my daughter. I initially had a lot of fun with this partner. However, she didn't communicate with me and was obviously working through some of her own issues because she was unfaithful multiple times, and the relationship ended.
Then you met someone who you felt was on the same page as you.
Absolutely. I really done a lot of work and worked on myself through going through counseling. And from the very beginning of this relationship, I voiced the importance of full and transparent communication, to which she agreed. Initially, I thought we were communicating with one another, and I thought that we had similar desires and goals. But however, I had my first significant age and spinal cord injury related health setback, and this really shined a light through the holes in our relationship. I then realized that she hadn't been fully honest with herself or with me, and she really couldn't handle the realities of what could happen to my body with a spinal cord injury, and she booked it. That was really tough, and I had a really hard time coming to terms with that one.
Sometimes you can do all the right things, and a relationship can still fail, and it just sucks. So some things are just not fair, and they're not okay.
No. So really all you can do is be true to yourself and move on. It was important to me to take some time away to be on my own, to reassess, and to, again, focus a little bit more on myself. I then at that point realized I needed more work to do. And at that time, I spent 4 years on my own, not dating, interested in dating. And my focus was on being kinder to myself, learning a little more about myself, and really taking care of my daughter. I wanted to come something that's referred to as full circle. I wanted to know that I could fully satisfy every aspect of my life on my own. That I wasn't wanting to be with someone for any other, there wasn't any other reason behind it, right? There was no other agenda other than to be with someone because I wanted to be with someone.
The wanting.
That's right. Yeah. And again, communication with yourself and acceptance of yourself is key before engaging in new relationships. So I really wanted to work hard at getting back to that spot.
And I did the same thing. I spent several years single, working on myself, drawing on past relationships to learn how I communicated or didn't communicate, and to focus on what I really wanted. At the time we met, I knew I would be happier alone than to be with someone just for the sake of being with someone. A partner should not be expected to shoulder the work you should do for yourself. Partners encourage each other to be their best. If you're on your own and you're looking to find a partner, again, consider dating yourself first. I had a lot of fun with this. a lot of fun with this.
There's a
But
tickle trunk that shows it.
that's a whole, that could be a whole other talk. And, you know, I nearly broke my finger in the ceiling fan. But anyway, if you're tenacious, but when you're tenacious like yourself, Wallace, you don't give up, right? So what happened next?
I responded to a smile you sent me, then we met.
Yeah. So, I mean, even though we're a good match, we have shared values and similar goals, it still takes work, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we need help with that. At the beginning of 2020, I started cognitive behavioral therapy with a great therapist. And she helped me to address issues that have been lingering since childhood. With cognitive behavioral therapy, basically you're observing, you're looking back, you're considering things, and you're observing what's gone on. And so they're there just to kind of guide you through it, not tell you how you're feeling about it.
Yeah.
It's hard work, but well worth the effort. And through doing that work, it's amazing how after the period of a year of doing that, it becomes almost then automatic of how you address things or look at things, that you put that CBT, that cognitive behavioral therapy part onto it. And
Again, the self-talk.
Yeah, that
just becomes the
self-talk.
positive self-talk. Or it's not just positive, but it's accurate.
Yeah.
Self-talk.
And I can't tell you how many times since then where something's come up for myself that I hadn't even thought of. And I'm thinking about it, and all of a sudden, all the puzzle piece, it's like it's shifting and clicks together finally, because I have the tools to how to look at that critically, right? So Wallace, would you share your experience with CBT?
Yeah, and this is where when we talk about caring for yourself and understanding yourself and loving yourself and all of those things, I don't mean to minimize it and make it seem like it's that easy. It takes work, it takes focus, and you can get there, and it's for some it's quicker than others, and it's all individual, so you can't compare yourself to other people.
And it can get ugly before it
that's
gets
right.
better.
And it's a matter of maybe sometimes, and there's also setbacks. There's times where you have to go read through it or go through it once again, because for me, just prior to my accident, before the spinal cord injury, I was in CBT. I was really fearful of people finding out when I was younger, because my therapist was key in helping me understand the importance of clear, assertive communication, both myself and others. And it was a hard thing for me, because prior to all of that, my community, I was a really closed book. I was a really, a hard nut to crack. I didn't talk about anything, but more importantly, how I felt about myself, my self-talk was really extremely negative. I saw myself as never being capable. I was a failure. I blamed myself for poor relationships with my family. Really, when it came down to it, everything was my fault. So it was really through therapy that I learned that I needed to be kinder to myself, and that I needed to be more accurate, and that I was myself. I wasn't necessarily have to be the culmination of other people.
So just prior to the accident, that you had actually done all of this work, and you came to a point of really loving and accepting yourself.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of work, and for a young person to do that, that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually that experience is kind of in part of why I became a therapist myself.
Yeah.
I was also went through some CBT at the time of the accident, again, because of the trauma and some of the messages and self-talk I was giving myself. That was, again, the beginning process of accepting my new life. Before my daughter was born, I entered therapy again to address fears of fatherhood, and the roots of these fears, because they were based in childhood type traumas, and not wanting to carry forward certain behaviors and trends, patterns that happened within my family. And it really helped immensely. I also went through couples therapy several times in the past, but really when it comes to that, both parties have to be invested in the process. And for me, that wasn't the case. I'm currently in CBT, again, to continue my ongoing issues, or exploring ongoing issues related to childhood trauma. Melanie and I have done couples therapy, and people laugh when they hear this, but we went to couples therapy to learn how to argue.
Yeah.
You know, and it was actually really very helpful.
It was incredibly helpful because for me, arguments meant that things were done. And I didn't see how people could have arguments, and it was a very difficult thing for me.
You couldn't figure out how I could be mad at you but love you at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes back to my stuff that I carried in. So, but by me doing the work on my own and us working together, it was like a light bulb went on and all the pieces kind of fell together. But it's, you know, it was worth it. This relationship means I'll do anything to keep it healthy and keep it going because it makes me very happy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Me too.
Thanks. So the last thing we want to cover this afternoon is the notion of a romantic partner being a caregiver. And Wallace, you and I have had quite a few discussions lately about the term caregiver even, right? And how problematic both of us kind of find that to be, because it has a very medical edge to it. So when it comes to, so we're intimate partners. I'm not your caregiver. So I prefer the term support. I support Wallace in what he needs, but on the flip side of that, he also supports me in what I need. So it's a two-way street.
No, it's just as important to be open and honest about your disability. It's just as important to have the conversation around this topic. Some people with disabilities won't want their intimate partner providing any support when it comes to self-care or day-to-day activities. Similarly, not everybody who enters into a relationship is interested in providing these types of supports. Both are valid, but this needs to be openly communicated. When both parties are open to the provision of support revolving around their disability, it can work, providing there's open communication. Pardon me. It's important for the support not, and this is so important, to erode or take over the intimate relationship you have. That you have to not blur the lines between those two things. And again, this is doable, but it does require practice. And again, that word's coming up, communication.
Yeah.
So find out what's right for you and right for your partner. And it's almost like drawing up a contract, you know, that we're not going to go beyond this, and that we are going to make sure in order to sustain and maintain or to improve our intimate relationship, we are going to do A, B, and C. And you make sure you spend time to do those things. They're just as important, if not more so.
Yeah, and when you set the way you communicate with one another, that you need to keep touching back, because sometimes you need to do some tune-ups on that.
Yep.
And sometimes all the wheels fall off. And you have a really terrible day, and
I've had my wheels fall off and it sucks.
You've left your wheels in cities.
I've left after I got to Oakville and realized I left a wheel in Toronto. And what sucks most about it is I ran the damn thing over when I was leaving the parking lot.
What was that?
That was a mess. Anyway.
So that was a lot of information to get through. So we can certainly come back and focus on smaller section if the desire is there. If you want to have a chat that's focused on how to talk to your partner about introducing sex toys into your relationship, we can do that. Wherever wherever the interest is, then we'll certainly do that.
Absolutely. So basically, if you haven't got it by now, our main message is be kind to yourself, be honest to yourself, okay? And your self-acceptance will expand your ability to be honest with others. And again, communication is key. So speaking of communication, a nice little segue into opening up to you.
Want me to move this cord over to there?
Sure.
That'll work.
If there are any questions or comments, we're going to go black for a second here while we fix
Well, we're not
our...
gonna. This is connected to.
Oh,
this,
that's right. Okay.
I just want to have a big screen with
Yeah.
faces on it.
So we'll open up the floor to anybody who has a comment or a question.
Yeah, well, first I want to say thank you so much for that talk. Like, that was so educational, and that was just so awesome, both of you talking about that. So thank you so much. There are some questions to post for you anonymously. So the first one is, how do you bring up the differences in your body to a potential sexual partner? How much do you share, and how soon?
Well, we could talk about how we did it.
Sure. And I can talk about different experiences at different times.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, with us, it was very, we didn't want to, we were at a point where we didn't want to there was no bullshit. We wanted to make sure that we were upfront, and like we talked about wasting time. It was, you know what, been there, done that, know what I want, know what I want to get out of this. I've got hot pants for you big time, so this is where, you know, it sits. And so I was cooking in the kitchen and Melanie was carving pumpkins, and we just had an open, frank conversation about,
because we had a lot of conversations over the phone, and that it may have been the first, no, not the first time, but maybe the second time that you came over. And you came over and you wanted to make me dinner. I'm like, that's cool, and I'm gonna carve pumpkins. So I set up the pumpkins to carve, and you were cooking, and yeah, we just started talking about sex. And I think as well, I made assumptions myself. I made assumptions when I first saw the pictures of Randy or Randy Wallace and read about him. I thought, oh, I'll be able to sit on his lap on the wheelchair, and, you know, this is so exciting. Yeah. And then not understanding that's
stick a quarter in my ass and I'll vibrate.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a thing. But I thought, oh my God, like that's really kind of exciting to think about that. And so then when I realized that that was not the reality of it, that was because we had these open, honest, frank conversations. Yep. So I wanted to know, like, there's something to be said for leaving some things for when you actually get into bed with one another, or wherever it is that you're going to explore sex with one another. You want to leave some things up, but I wanted to make sure there was nothing that I did that would hurt him in any way, like with skin or with anything like that. So we had conversations about that. And in turn, I also talked about things for me that are important for me to express to Wallace about my body. So it was just, it wasn't sitting down across the kitchen table, you know, saying, okay, here's the 7 things you need to know. It was in a relaxed atmosphere where he was making dinner.
Me in an apron, and she was elbows deep in a pumpkin.
Yes, and I had my drill out, drilling holes in the, you know, so it was just easy to talk about. Yeah. So when that day came, when we
had a nap,
when we had our infamous nap, where I measured and I said, I don't know, my bed is X number of inches off the floor, and he says, I'll find a way to get there. And I threw him onto the bed.
She helped me transfer like I've never been helped before. I thought I was going to hit the wall.
Got a new bed since then. That's lower.
Yeah, it's a lower bed, but man, this was a challenge.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't know. I think we're also at a particular age, and not to say that younger people can't come to being comfortable with themselves earlier, like, as well. I think some people
hopefully
do.
These messages will help.
But I think
age, comfortable with
age helps with that, where you're like, I just don't care. Like, you just.
I think age is a part of it, but I think it's just also comfort with yourself, and because I know with myself that I've been comfortable since, well, my sexual revolution when I was 30.
So 30, so that was like 10 years post-injury.
Yeah.
Was when
I had my first real satisfying sexual experience, because I spent 10 years in a really quite intimate-less relationship. The way I think I like to look at it is it's always good to communicate what it is you like, but you don't necessarily have to tell the person how to get there. So that leaves for, this is what I like, this is what my limits are, this is where this is a go, this is a stop, but let's play together to find out how we're going to get there.
I'm going to ask you a question, because you don't use a leg bag now.
No.
But you did use a leg bag when you had that sexual revolution weekend in Amsterdam, right? Yeah. So did you talk to her about the leg bag prior?
Yep.
So how did that come up?
See, at that point too, I was lay the groundwork a little bit. This was somebody who I had met through when I was racing. I was newly single, and this was a person where it really came down to it. I had nothing to lose, right? Like, I wasn't looking for a long-term relationship. She lived in England, I lived in Canada, and there was a lot of chemistry between us. And when it came down to it, I thought, you know what, I've got nothing to lose here, so I'm just gonna.
It allowed you, freed you.
It freed me to just lay things on the table and lay things out there and say, this is the way it is, this is the way it is, this is the way my body works and all that stuff. And she said, all right, well, this is what I'm like, and this is this, and intercourse is off the table. And I said, that's okay. I didn't need to bring the pills. I need to do that anyway. So, and then basically we spent the weekend in bed, and I didn't even take off my underwear. So it was, yeah, it was, and for me, I was like, you say about a light bulb going on. I was like, there's something to this truth thing that really seems to work.
Yeah.
And when I talked to her about it afterwards, she was the first one that said to me, your confidence in how you communicate about yourself and your body, and how, and with my scars, the same thing. Took off my shirt, and I've got surgery scars all over me, and she said I didn't even think twice about it. And so it was that confidence that was the most attractive thing. And I was like, well, so it was a really good learning experience. And then from that point forward, that's what I adopted as my way of doing it, is just being, when you feel that it's going to get to that point where their intimacy, sex is going to be a part of it, then gotta say, this might happen and this might happen, and this is gonna,
Could it be something too? Could you start it if you feel weird about starting it yourself? Could you say, let's have a conversation about what works, what is
everybody's communication style is a little bit different,
right?
Yeah, you got to find that way of
depends.
introducing it that works good for you. I mean, I can't say that this,
And would it be fair?
Very frank about it.
If you can't have a conversation about it, how ready are you to actually do it?
That's right.
I don't know.
Right.
Like I know like speaking for myself in my youth, we never talked about anything. You just fooled around and things went to where they went to.
Yeah.
And that wasn't always necessarily a good thing.
No.
So
and again, when you talk about giving consent,
yeah,
she fixes me up good. So anyway, hopefully that answers the question or gives some insight into it anyway.
Yeah, I think that answered multiple questions in one, to be honest. I was like looking at things, I'm like, okay, that kind of answers that and that. So no, that was really great, and that was really thorough, and I think that really helps give insight into a lot of different things. Another question was kind of talking a little bit about a story about of somebody that they went on a date, and they told the person before they went on the date that they had a disability, and the person was fine with this, but then when they actually showed up on the date, they weren't comfortable with it and they weren't okay with it. So how did you kind of go about go through, or kind of go about getting your wife to accept your disability?
Well, I don't think you just did accept it.
Well,
right. I mean, but yeah, that's, I guess.
I think there's kind of a couple of parts there.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know if you want to talk about and I'll talk about how I felt about things, but why don't you start with then, if you were in a situation where somebody said X, and then when you got to the point where you met, have you had an experience like that?
Well, I had one of my dating experiences when I was newly injured. The person knew me through a friend, and then we started dating, and then as the relationship went on a little bit, she used the excuse that, and this blew me away, because she was such a rebellious person, she wouldn't listen to her parents if she was at gunpoint, and said to me, oh, well, I'm sorry, but we can't date anymore because my parents are afraid you're not going to be able to support me properly if we continue dating, which was a load of shit, because if it was obviously her, because I knew how she was with her parents, and even if it was her parents, well, they suck. But so that was an experience where I think as things went on, the facts of my disability were more for her that she could handle, and that
wasn't about you.
No,
that was about her.
Yeah.
So it's not like you had to do anything to change anything. You just had to say, okay, so that's just one more, and let's take a break. Or
you're not the one.
You're not the one.
No.
That's a frog kissed, and let's move on.
Sure, and as hell didn't turn into a prince.
I think for myself, like, you didn't get me to accept your disability. I just immediately were attracted to you. And what the package looked like was, and it's beautiful. I have never been okay with societal norms, with traditional ideas of what beauty is, what feminine or what masculine is. I take great issue with that. I think there's a great deal of harm that comes from that.
So you're saying I'm really not good looking.
Oh my God, you're hot.
Boy, I really got that compliment.
Yeah. But again, I mean, it is the package, but it's not just what the outside is, it's what's on the inside too, right? And I mean, I've never been in an intimate relationship with somebody with a visible disability, but I have worked with people. As a youth, I worked as a respite worker. I volunteered at a school with kids, so I'd been around that. So I had seen very different bodies, different ways that people move, communicate. So that wasn't new to me, and I'm okay with all of the bodily function stuff. None of that stuff freaks me out. So that's just who I was before I met him.
So I think basically what it comes down to is you shouldn't have to get anybody to accept your disability. You want to find a person that accepts you for you.
Yeah.
And if your disability is a part of you, it's not all of you.
Yeah.
And so if you have to put effort into getting someone to accept your disability, then I don't think that's. I mean, they've got to accept you for you.
You can't do
right?
their work.
Yeah.
No, and there's something else I was going to say.
Sorry, I kind of cut you off there.
No, you didn't.
Okay, good. Because
Um,
I'll pay for that later.
yeah, you will. It'll come back to me.
Okay.
I can't think of it.
So hopefully that helped with that.
Thank you. No, I think that was a really important conversation to have. For sure, definitely about accepting yourself. I think you kind of answered this one a little bit earlier about, that, sex can be a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation, but still having that conversation. So how do you kind of approach somebody who might be uncomfortable talking about sex, or how might somebody become more comfortable talking about sex?
Well, I think the big thing, or one of the big things we have to consider too here is also the consent piece. So rather than just delving right into a conversation about sex, you could, I think a good starting point is always just to say to somebody, I feel this relationship is going in this direction, or I'd like it to go into this direction, or it's some version of that, and saying to the person, are you cool with us having a talk about this? Because it's, and going from there, because if the person's not comfortable with it, then you can say, okay, is there a point when you might be comfortable with it?
Let's give it more time. You can do it in smaller chunks, right? Because with anything, what's her face? Podcaster. I can't remember, but she has a great term called fucking first times, right? Like just first times, it can be so hard. So practice by doing things repeatedly that it becomes easier to do. So if you start with smaller, easier little tidbits to talk about, and then build yourself up. Right. But if you have multiple conversations with a person and you never quite feel comfortable, is it because you're not comfortable with it yourself, or is it because you're not comfortable with them? So if you're comfortable with having those conversations yourself, but you feel like you can't with this person, well, maybe that's just not the right person. It's a trust thing, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have mutual trust and being able to be mutually vulnerable in order to do these.
Yeah.
And let it out.
Yeah. But like you said before too, that don't assume that the other person's not going to understand. And even if they're a little resistant at first, like you said, going in with the little tidbits and, would you like to have a little conversation about this? Or we don't have to go all the way into it, but let's talk about some of it, because like you said, I'd like it to go in that direction, or I feel it's going in this direction, and have that kind of as an opener to get the ball rolling. And then you'll find out too, it'll be a good gauge as to find out whether or not the person is actually comfortable with, and it might not have anything to do with the disability that they're uncomfortable with. It could be that they're uncomfortable with sex. I mean, they're you know, there's all kinds of, we come into every relationship with history.
Yeah.
For those that say, again, when you look at the bios and dating websites, no baggage.
Yeah.
Fuck off. Everybody has baggage.
Yeah.
You know, it just sorry. That annoys me. Like there's just that sense that people have, like, I need someone who's clean and doesn't have. We've all got our skeletons. We've all got our dirty
I want
bits.
that
We've all got,
Lululemon woman.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So gotta marry the virgin and woman in white.
Yeah.
You know, all that crap. So yeah, it's.
I had something that is kind of sticking out in my mind of a lot of the things you're talking about is it sounds a lot like there's a lot of trial and error, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's not like you're just gonna go out and meet someone and then that's it. You're gonna fall in love and that's the person you're with forever. Like, so whether it be, you know, like you were talking about, even if maybe you're not ready to like put yourself out there dating wise, just learning how to engage, like you said, like someone in the lineup at the grocery store, just like starting conversations and getting more comfortable in those kind of, obviously post-pandemic when you're more comfortable with that kind of stuff, but having those kind of little interactions and normalizing that so that when you are maybe ready to do the dating thing, that little, you know, just sort of easy talk isn't so awkward, right? Like it's, and then another thing, like the person that sent in the question about, you know, showing up for the date and then they were kind of like weirded out or whatever. And as painful and awful as that is, you know, that's a them problem. Like that's not a problem. Like that's really on them and it's their loss. Like if they're so shallow that is going to stop them from potentially meeting this incredible human who has like so much to offer, then yeah, like you're better off learning that on date one.
Date 4.
Than, you know,
Or date 10 years.
Yeah.
Date 20 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, you know, it's about trial and error, and some of it's gonna suck. Like putting yourself out there can be scary and intimidating. But Wallace, what you were saying is like the more confident you are in your own abilities and what you have to offer, the easier those little blows will be. You know, it won't be so harsh on the
and too, when I said to you about with the whether it's on a dating website or whatever, however you are trying to meet that person, take breaks from it, because it can be very hard on your sense of yourself.
Because if you go 3 months and there's nobody that you're interested in, or nobody seems to respond to you, that can be really hard.
Yeah.
So to take a break away from that.
Take a break and treat yourself and be kind to yourself and remind yourself of that great person that you are, and then get back into it again. And exactly, sure, you hit it on the head when you said that's a them thing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely.
And I think too often we put unrealistic timelines on things, on anything that we do. You know, oh, I love that dress. I'm going to go on a diet and I'm going to fit into that in 6 weeks, or you know, okay, I'm going to start dating. So, oh, within 3 months, you know, who knows? You know, I could be making wedding plans or whatever. And you can't do that.
No.
You can't do that. Otherwise, you are going to be disappointed over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's going to take the time that it takes.
Yep. Yep.
And you know, yeah. And I think the time for us, I think it was perfect timing, and we were halfway through.
And it's funny because our paths had crossed a number of times prior to the smile she sent me.
We didn't know we were at university at the same time, at the same university at the same time.
Her ex-husband remembers me.
Yeah, he remembers him.
Yeah.
It's weird how often some of the things crossed, and then it's like
they lived with a guy that I hung out with in high school, like not just knew, but like actively was a friend with.
Yeah.
Lived in the same, like they shared a house together.
Yeah.
And in a completely different city. Like there's just all of these things. It's just kind of, it's crazy how the world works. But really when it comes down to it, and in this crazy world, if you can learn to love yourself by whatever means, if it's, you know, by yourself or with help or however it is, it's that self-acceptance, then
And
you
I-
can get through.
And I think that that's true, disability or not.
Yeah.
And I know, I'm really glad that some of the relationships it took a long time to get to the point where I really loved myself and accepted myself and was like, yeah, and I could take care of myself, you know, being a single mom and doing, and everything felt really good.
Mhm.
It wasn't until then that I was really ready.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you start into something before you're ready, and you find that the same cycles that had broken down relationships in the past just continue, right?
And for everybody, it's
gonna be different.
It's different. Some people get to that realization really quick,
Yeah.
and at a much younger age. Like take a look at Mackenzie and Mitchell.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very self-aware for their age.
For their age, yeah.
And yet for others, you know, some of us need a kick in the head to.
Some of us, yeah,
Some of
it
us
takes
are
a while.
Some of us takes a while,
Yeah.
and have to take the long road
Yeah.
to get there. But it you know, ultimately, the work is worth doing.
Yeah.
And whether or not you end up with someone, if you are happy with yourself,
You're
then
still in
that's
good company.
You're still in good company. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. And Melanie, what you said, like, so first of all, I think, you know, that intersecting path, you guys just had to be in the right,
Yeah.
you guys had to be in the right places for that to like be the right time for you to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other part about like really working on yourself first is that if something doesn't happen with someone, or like you go on a few dates, or you know, and then it doesn't work out, you still know that you have someone great yourself to turn back to, you know, like you're not leaning on them to
Yeah.
fulfill something or to like hold you up or to make you feel whole. You're two
Yeah.
whole people potentially coming together instead of that whole like two halves of a whole, which I hate that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so come in as a whole person yourself. And then if it doesn't work out, you're walking away as a whole person anyway. So
Yeah,
Absolutely.
then you stop on the way home and you find like the best stuff that you want to make for dinner that night, and you make yourself a candlelight dinner, you have a nice soak in the tub, you do whatever.
You have
and
a great FI night.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is there any final questions or comments for Wallace and Melanie before we close out?
There's something that I want to say. Oh my goodness, and I just lost it when you said about loving yourself. Oh, another thing that society tells us is that it's arrogant to be confident. And that is such a load of crap, because there's a difference between being confident and cocky, right? But there's I think nothing more attractive than someone who is super confident
Yeah.
and they know themselves and they're,
Could
you know,
could
all of those things. It is more than okay to be confident
Could you
and to
say-
be able to say to yourself, I'm a good person.
Yeah.
And I've got these qualities. I think that is, to me, it's the bee's knees.
could you say that the core of confidence is not apologizing for taking space in this world?
Well, yeah.
That, you know, you're not having to make yourself smaller or be different. You just are unapologetic and you're you. And you go, it's not that you're a jerk to anybody, but you do put your needs up there to
Yeah.
make sure that they're met. Because, you know, there's a reason why they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before helping somebody else. You know, if you're not equipped or in a space to feel, then how, yeah, you can't just give it all away.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
You got away with weights.
Thanks.
Yeah, right. All right, Trix.
Well, again, thank you so much, Melanie and Wallace. Oh, it looks like we do have one more question.
Yeah, sorry for coming in late, guys. I might
Oh,
miss.
cool.
But you know, maybe you covered COVID, but I wanted to visit a guy last night, and I'm not allowed at his house. I'm not allowed at my mom's house. I haven't seen people in a year and a half. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you know, it's super hard, and we've just now been able to meet with people. We're all double vaccinated now, and to like have that first hug, it nearly destroys you, because you don't realize just how much you've been missing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I can't imagine, and we would, you know, if there are people out there who have started relationships during COVID, it would be great to hear about it, because I just don't know.
It's tough.
It's very
I went,
tough.
I went to see my doctor a few months ago, and she palpated my muscle. I said, "That's the first time someone's touched me in 6 months."
Yeah.
You know, but I'm this is another subject maybe for another time around. But I'm on a dating site, but it's just literally a handful of people. It's a disability site, and maybe I should be on a regular site, but I'm very hesitant to do that, such as maybe Quest or something like that. But I'm on a disability site, and it's a very small site in terms of people that are. I've been on for 6 months. I got my second wink. I guess somebody winked at me last night. I have no idea where that'll go, but if there's any sites that people are familiar with, because I think the more sites that there are, the less chance, you know, because people get dispersed. People get dispersed so much. I just wonder what that subject would look like to talk about dating sites.
Yeah.
So is there a hesitance?
Sure,
Oh,
okay.
sorry, Sherry.
Oh, that's okay. I was just gonna say, James, we're actually gonna be covering that in not the next session, but the one after, talking all about dating sites, how
Oh, awesome.
Excellent.
how dating is changing with COVID, and how, as much as it sucks that we can't like just go out and meet people sort of organically, it's also opened up like so much more normalcy around like the virtual stuff. So you can really weed out, you know, some of the people early on through those virtual dates, and it's less awkward. Like it's much easier to be like, you know what, this isn't feeling right, like whatever, end, as opposed to
Yeah. Oh, a bad connection. Click.
yeah. So James, we will be talking about that, but that's not for a month. But if you ever wanted to chat with me about that like beforehand, I'm happy to share some of the resources I've been finding, because I'm putting together that presentation.
Okay, maybe I'll
Oh,
do
that's
Great.
awesome, Sherry.
We'll definitely tune in for that,
Yeah.
because that's good. Just I'm assuming, Sherry, are you going to be and Megan, are you going to be recording all of these sessions and posting all of them, so we could link them to our site as well, so that would
Absolutely.
be great, because this is just really important.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Alrighty, well, if that's all the questions, then I think we can stop the recording.